Small leaves in our bonsai trees is a highly desirable characteristic. It's what creates that illusion or impression of a large tree in miniature. There are a number of tips and tricks which I'm going to tell you about to help you ensure you get small leaves on your bonsai trees. And be sure to keep watching to the end because you're going to be shocked or surprised by at least one of those. One of the most important aspects of bonsai tree cultivation is achieving a sense of scale. In bonsai, the goal is to create a miniature version of a full-grown tree, and the key element in achieving this realistic appearance is the size of the leaves. Smaller leaves help enhance the overall proportion of the tree, making it appear more lifelike. Large leaves, on the other hand, can disrupt the illusion of miniaturization, often appearing out of place on a small tree. Thus, reducing leaf size is an essential technique in bonsai horticulture, and there are various methods to achieve this goal, including selecting species with naturally smaller leaves and employing specific horticultural practices. Choosing species with naturally small leaves. When beginning a bonsai, one of the first considerations is selecting the right species. Some trees naturally produce smaller leaves that are more suitable for bonsai cultivation. For example, both Chinese elm and Cotoneaster are popular species for bonsai because their small leaves, compact growth habit, and suitability for shaping. In contrast, other species such as contorted hazel or horse chestnut produce relatively large leaves that are difficult to reduce effectively using bonsai techniques. While the contorted hazel has attractive twisted branches and a unique form, its large, coarse leaves remain a challenge even for experienced bonsai practitioners. The key difference between species like Cotoneaster and Corylus is the inherent leaf size and the tree's ability to produce fine ramification and small foliage through bonsai care. Plants with naturally small leaves, or those that are genetically predisposed to produce fine, dense growth, are much easier to work with when aiming to achieve a small leaf bonsai. Thus, selecting a species with small or proportionally sized leaves is one of the most effective ways to ensure that the tree will develop the ideal appearance for a bonsai. Bonsai horticultural techniques for reducing leaf size. Beyond choosing the right species, bonsai practitioners can use a range of techniques to reduce leaf size, all of which contribute to the finer details of ramification, branch development, and leaf production. One important principle is understanding the relationship between ramification and leaf size. As a bonsai tree matures, it naturally increases the number of branches and buds, which distributes the tree's stored energy more evenly across more growth points. This process, called ramification, leads to smaller leaves as the tree's energy is divided amongst a greater number of growing tips. By encouraging this type of branching, bonsai cultivators can reduce the size of individual leaves while promoting a denser, more compact overall structure. In nature, trees naturally divide and subdivide from the central trunk through the main branches and on out to the very tips of each branch, with secondary and tertiary branching. It's part of what makes for the image of an aged, mature tree. Ramification in the context of bonsai refers to the fine branching structure of a tree, where the branches divide and subdivide, creating an increasingly dense network of twigs and foliage. This results in a tree that looks mature and full, even though it's miniaturized. In bonsai, the goal is to mimic the appearance of a mature tree in a much smaller form. To achieve this, bonsai developers often work on refining the branches by encouraging the growth of secondary and tertiary branches and beyond. This creates a more intricate and detailed silhouette, enhancing the aesthetic appeal of the bonsai tree. Subdivision of branches involves the progressive splitting and bifurcation of larger branches into smaller ones. By doing this, the bonsai artist can create a more natural and aged appearance, as well as improve the overall balance and design of the tree. Trimming back to 2 buds on new growth and shoots is a technique used to encourage branching and compact growth. By limiting the number of buds, the tree focuses its energy on fewer shoots, resulting in stronger growth and better ramification. This also helps in reducing the distance between nodes, or internodes, leading to shorter spaces between branches and a denser canopy. In terms of progression of your bonsai from seed, we've got an acorn which was planted this year. We've got a seedling or sapling which is about a year old now. This is probably about 3 years in age, and similarly this was grown from an acorn. It's about 3 or 4 years old. And finally we've got this tree which was clearly collected from the ground, but is perhaps, I would guess, about 15 years old, something like that.
It's incredible when you see the difference in the progressions, but also the difference. These two are different ages, and yet the thickness of the trunks. I mean, obviously, you say the sooner you put it into the pot, the sooner you restrict the ability of that tree to grow, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely, because as soon as it's in the pot, it's in an artificial environment, and it's got restricted access to resources, nutrients.
Do you find that with oaks, and it's a question I've often had, the size of the leaves? Someone actually said they were surprised how small the leaves were on some of my oaks. But I noticed here, this one, they're actually quite small leaves. This has got quite small leaves, whereas this has got bigger.
But the difference between the two, is the ramification or the twigginess of the branches. So the more branches you develop, the more those resources in the tree have to be shared out amongst more buds and branches, and the result is that naturally you get a smaller leaf on those.
It sounds simple, but that's it. So small pot, more ramification, which is why we talk about building the ramification up of a tree. Certainly if in a big leaf variety, hey, there you go. So how do you get small leaves? Get it into a pot, but multiply, get that ramification going first. You need that ramification. So yeah, lovely.
Defoliation and partial defoliation for smaller leaves. This can be quite a scary process, particularly the first time that you do it. A more direct method to reduce leaf size in some species is defoliation or partial defoliation. This process involves removing leaves from a healthy tree, allowing it to grow a second flush of smaller leaves. Defoliation is particularly effective in species such as Japanese maples or oaks, which can regenerate smaller foliage after a complete or partial defoliation. Biology behind defoliation. When a Japanese maple bonsai tree is defoliated, it triggers a hormonal response. The removal of leaves disrupts the production of auxins, or growth hormones produced in the leaves. This hormonal shift triggers the growth of buds at the base of the leaves and the development of new leaves. Photosynthesis. Leaves are essential for photosynthesis, the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. By defoliating, you momentarily halt this process, but the tree compensates by producing new leaves that can resume photosynthesis more efficiently. Energy reserves. The tree uses its stored energy reserves to produce a new set of leaves. The second flush of leaves tend to be smaller because the energy reserves are typically lower than they were for the initial growth. Because of this use of stored energy, the process should only be done on otherwise healthy trees. Horticultural practice. Defoliation is usually performed in late spring to early summer, when the tree is actively growing and has enough time to recover before the onset of colder weather. Carefully cut off the leaves, leaving the petiole or leaf stalks intact. The petioles protect the buds, so fully removing them can potentially damage the leaf buds. The petioles will fall off naturally as new buds develop. Avoid defoliating the entire tree at once if it's not healthy or is not a vigorous grower. Benefits. The second flush of leaves is typically smaller, which enhances the scale and proportion of the bonsai, making it look more refined and in line with the miniaturized aesthetic. The timing of defoliation is critical. It should be done during the tree's growing season, typically in late spring or early summer, when the tree has enough energy to regenerate new leaves. The process works because defoliation stresses the tree in a controlled way, causing it to redirect its growth resources towards new leaf production. In turn, the new leaves that emerge are even smaller and more refined. Defoliation can be performed in one of two ways: total defoliation, where all the leaves are removed, or partial defoliation, where only some of the leaves are removed, leaving a few to continue photosynthesizing. The choice between these two methods depends on the species and the desired effect. For example, maples tend to respond well to total defoliation, while oaks might benefit from partial defoliation. It's essential to perform defoliation only on healthy, well-established trees. A tree that is not in vigorous growth or is stressed by environmental factors should not undergo defoliation, as this could cause damage. Furthermore, it's important to ensure that the tree has resource and vitality to regrow leaves after the procedure. Species that do not respond well to leaf reduction. While many species respond positively to leaf reduction techniques such as defoliation, not all trees are adaptable. For example, beech trees, fagus, which are prized in bonsai for their elegant shape and smooth bark, do not respond well to leaf reduction or the stimulation of a second flush of leaves. Beech trees typically do not regenerate leaves as easily as maples or oaks. In fact, defoliating a beech can lead to a weakened tree, or a polytine leaf flush that disrupts the tree's seasonal cycles. In the case of species like beech, an alternative method is to reduce the leaf size by cutting the leaves in half. This technique involves trimming the leaves down the middle, effectively halving the size without removing them entirely. While this does not result in a complete regeneration of smaller leaves, it can still reduce the overall leaf size and maintain the aesthetic balance of the bonsai. It also allows light into the inner portions of the tree. It's important to perform this operation carefully using sharp, clean tools to avoid damaging the tree. Cutting leaves in half should be done early in the growing season before the tree has fully matured its foliage. You should bear in mind that any leaves that are reduced using defoliation or cutting are only going to be that reduced size for this growing season. But once they fall and grow back next season, they will be the regular size again. It's only really through use of ramification and using species with smaller leaves that you're going to get that permanent reduction in size. What's been your experience of creating smaller leaves in your bonsai trees? Leave a comment below. And if you're not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button to be notified of future videos. And for more top tips on your bonsai trees, be sure to watch this video next.